No sweat. Washington took care of Weber State.
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back in to another edition of the Locked On Huskies podcast. I'm Roman Tomashoff. That's Lars Hanson. He's site editor with Athlon Sports' Inside the Huskies. I'm the site editor with Huskies Wire. Thank you for making this your first watch or first listen of the day, as we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy, because 5 Hour Energy fixes tired fast with zero sugar and a convenient portable size. It's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. Go to 5hourenergy.com and use promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. Lars, we got a really fun show coming to all the everydayers on this Sunday afternoon. We're going to be talking about just some of our biggest concerns we saw from Washington's season opener against Weber State. We're talking about that the whole time. I know, huge shocker, because the defense had a couple things it needs to work on, but also looked fantastic. And we just got to start with the dominant showing that we saw from Washington, especially Jonah Coleman.
It's exactly almost a rinse and repeat of what we said on the preview show. Run the ball, let the defense get set, and you'll figure it out from there. And it was kind of it's exactly what we saw from the offensive fall camp, where we knew the defense was going to be ahead of the curve, especially early on. And that's basically what ended up happening. It's what I wrote in my game show at Athlon Sports, where the defense sets the tone, kind of lets the offense just figure it out. And I mean, we were saying it had basically two potential scoring drives, one missed field goal and one made field goal. That was it. But the other key with that is, okay, cool. Defense can pitch a shutout, whatever. You still got to score some points on offense. Otherwise, we got 2021 Montana going on here. And from the first drive, aside from the Quentin Moore hold, which was, upon further review, a little more questionable than I initially thought live when we were watching the game from the press box, Jonah got robbed of a 4-touchdown game in his first Husky start. And what's funny is, again, Scotty Graham is like the best PR guy anybody could ever ask for. Like, if you need somebody to endorse you for something, Scotty Graham is your guy. Like, if you
100%.
have any relationship with Scotty Graham, if Scotty Graham ever recruited you, no matter what, and he will be genuine when he says it. So when he was, hyping up Jonah Coleman, for lack of a better word, and talking about all things Jonah could do, and Jonah's first start at Arizona came at Washington in week 7. And so everything was kind of writing the script. Hey, Jonah should have a good game. Jonah should have a good game. And Jonah, when I say he's the heartbeat of this team, and especially this offense, that opener proved exactly why. He can run the ball between the tackles, runs violently, also still runs, with a decent amount of speed. So it's not like he's just a big bowling ball back there. But again, we said in fall camp, he's impossible to tackle. And it took 6-7 Weber State defenders to stop him from getting that touchdown, that third touchdown, which he ended up getting anyways. But
there's something I wanted to add there, because I remember seeing there's a stat that someone put out there that was on PFF where he forced 10 missed tackle attempts on just 16 rushes, which is just unbelievable. And you watch, just watching him run. Like, I know it's the that boy nice, just kind of way of looking at it. But really, that's the best way to look at it when you were watching Jonah, where, we're sitting up there in the press box. I'm sitting next to my guys. I got Alex Katzen and Ben Glassmeyer with me over at Huskies Wire. We're sitting up there and we're just watching, ooh, with every single run, because that's what he was doing. It was all different. Like the style on every single run was different, where we know he's powerful. We know he can run through guys, and he did that. But he ran around them. He ran with speed. He showed his burst. He got to the edge. He did a little bit of everything, and it was so fun to watch. And Lars, we could spend 30 minutes on Jonah Coleman, but he only got 2 touches last night. But Adam Muhammad looked just as good. Like, watching Adam Muhammad like that's you for just a nice little fourth wall break here. You stood up and you turned around. You were sitting down in the first row of the press box at the time, and you pointed at me. For any Family Guy fans, like the evil monkey, you pointed at me. You were like, "What did I say?" It's fantastic. It was beautiful. But watching just this running backs room is one of the things that's so exciting with this team. I thought Will Rogers was good. I thought there were some things that Will Rogers certainly could have improved on. We're going to get there. But watching the running game and watching not only the way that, Jedd schemed it up, but watching the actual talent in that room just makes me think this offense is going to be just fine, no matter what kind of offensive line concerns there might be.
Exactly. Well, and offensive line concerns, offense being slow, whatever you want to call it. Again, I'm sure you got plenty of these comments last night. Everybody realizes this is no longer 2022, 2023 Washington. Glad we all can finally have that realization that you and I have known for the last 6 months. And that's no slight to Will Rogers or anything like that. But whether it's DeMond starting in 24 or 25 or 26 or whatever, you have to have a solid run game. No matter how great DeMond is down the road, you still need Adam Muhammad and somebody else offsetting that load. And Adam showed right away those. And that now, granted, it was mostly, I think, the second team offensive line by the time he came in. But even still, that shows A, that those guys can win, and B, Adam, those 2 cuts that he had, I swear that touchdown, I'm calling it a touchdown run, because aside from it, stopped at the one truly like Marshawn in the Super Bowl, which I know is a tantalizing subject for you because,
we don't need to go down that road. I'm okay with it,
but the nice thing is Will Rogers is no Russell Wilson. And I think when I say that is he won't do bad throws. But the only way the way to make the quarterback easier is to have an effective run game. And I went back and looked at the numbers. How many 200-yard rushing games do you think Washington had last season?
0. Oh, one.
Exactly. And the one is the obvious one, which doesn't really count. And that's against Alex Grinch and USC. But again, that was also mostly Dylan Johnson. And we kind of knew what Dylan was at that point. But you could see now, again, Adam Lee, as you mentioned, got 2 touches. I thought he was going to have probably 3, 4, maybe 5 for 8.
I thought he was going to get 2, yeah.
Which is why it's an 85 and a touchdown. But again, aside from 1 yard being short, and I'm not trying to hype myself up here, but it's why also I know you were very high on Adam Muhammad. So me pointing at you, I was glad that we were on the same page with that. Where it's, hey, like, this is where my prediction, but also, hey, like, you're also right too. Like, it's a shout out to you. It's a shout out to you as well, because I remember you were one of the first asked these kind of game, like, back in the spring. How did you keep him a secret? It's like, easy money, and it's like, yeah, right. Nothing Scotty Graham does easy. But that's also why when we talked about him, he was such an important coach to bring, where, yes, obviously Jimmy Doherty, the quarterback's coach, Pow, the tight ends coach, making his return, Brennan Carroll, all that. But like the running backs really are the heartbeat of this team. And go back to, the Sark days, even. I know it's not a great comp, but everybody would always talk about, the passing offense, the pro style offense. Look at how many good running backs ended up coming from those schemes that are either still playing in the NFL right now or had a significant career in the NFL. Right. It's exactly what Jedd's doing at Washington.
Absolutely. So, before we move on here, I want to do like a fastest 2 minutes sort of thing. I just want to make sure that we touch on a lot of other guys before we move over to the defensive side, where when we looked at Washington's offense last night, we're going to get to some of the concerns. Obviously, the Jeremiah Hunter thing, he doesn't end up with a catch in his first game. I'm not too worried about that, but we'll get there. Giles Jackson, fantastic. This was something, we put it out in one of our little YouTube shorts the other day. Said, hey, don't sleep on Giles Jackson. Lars, what did I tell you? I said, if he had more catches than Jeremiah this season, we're off to a pretty roaring start there. Denzel Boston looked like a number 1 receiver. The amount of times where, Ben or Alex would point out just, hey, like they're bracketing Denzel again. They're bracketing Denzel again. Still, it goes off for 776 a touchdown. That's a really, really solid day for him. Damon Williams, man, like I have to say this again. Will Rogers was good. There's nothing like that I can say negatively about Will Rogers. There are some nitpicks, but nothing truly negative. But Damon, man, that athleticism, he was flying the ball.
He absolutely was, and I think it's why you want to put Damon in. It's when I talked about the special packages, you can just see the natural athleticism. But I do want to. I'm glad that you said that in that way. And what Jedd Fisch said post game when he was asked about it was it scripted to bring Damon in that way? It was score indicative. It was 28-3, 28-0, and also again that speaks in perfectly to what we're going to talk about next segment. The defense, like that's Jedd saying, you know what, I am guaranteeing we're going to win this game, because I can put my true freshman in with backups on defense, and we only allow 3 more points in the second half. Like that to me, like that's Jedd's statement of saying, hey, look, I can bet on my freshman because of the rest of the team.
Lars, speaking of the defense, let's get there. right after a message from our friends over at 5 Hour Energy. Are you tired after lunch? You're not alone. In fact, research shows that more than 70% of us hit the wall after lunch. Let a 5 Hour Energy shot help you leap over that wall instead of crashing into it. I'm sure Lars and I could use a 5 Hour Energy today. We were out late last night working, making sure that we were getting everything up to date for the everydayers on our sites. We love it. And 5 Hour Energy is the brand that hardworking people like you have trusted for over 20 years to give them the alert, energized feeling they need to get through a busy, hectic day. You always know where to find 5 Hour Energy shots right at the cash register at nearly every convenience, drug, and grocery store nationwide. You can stock up on money-saving multi-packs to make sure you never run out of delicious, energizing 5 Hour Energy shots. If you go to 5hourenergy.com, that is the number 5hourenergy.com, and get some 5 Hour Energy product today, you can use the promo code LOCKDOWNCFB to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. Lars, when we look at the defense was not perfect. There were still some run fit things that needed to be worked out. Tip of the cap to Weber State running back Damon Baxton, though. That dude balanced it outside really, really well. There were a couple plays where he made Cam Fabikilanen look kind of silly. And no slight to Cam. Cam had a really, really good day. But there were a couple plays where he just bounced at the outside and was just near perfect on a couple of those runs. But the defense overall, Richie Munoz, this is the biggest thing that I want to harp on. Like Richie Munoz, like that, the passing offense that we saw from Weber State last night wasn't necessarily elite by any stretch of the imagination, but holding them to 34% completion percentage and 98 passing yards, yeah, that's extremely impressive.
Yeah, this is the one shot I'm probably going to ever get the chance to take at Steve Belichick. It was kind of nice when he was talking about the Washington defense, and this is the Washington defense, not the Belichick defense, the Patriots defense. It was kind of a nice homage to struggle against the run, at least for the first drive and a half. And that was honestly what went through my head as I was like, oh, nice, sure. Cool. This is still the same Washington defense, struggling a little bit against the run, bending but not breaking, and that was kind of what I almost expected early on, especially when you're talking about they didn't have Javon Parker. You don't have a full repertoire. I didn't see Logan Sagapolu as much as I thought I would. So part of it, was player availability, scheme based, and we'll get to it. We'll get to it.
I have something that I whenever I like that I just want to talk about up front too.
I was going to say more or less like it was a good kind of first initial test, if you will, for the defense, knowing you don't have the full repertoire of guys, but it didn't take them long for them to get those run fits sorted out. And you could see it later on in the game where Munoz was trying to have some design runs and Washington snuffed it out and ended up getting a couple tackles for loss. And I think honestly, when you look at 7 PBUs, 4 or 5 tackles for loss, a lot of pressures, it's exactly what the scheme called for. Disruption on the back end leads to pressure in the front.
Absolutely. And that was the biggest thing. Like, shout out to Alphonzo Tuputala. He had a fantastic day. But one thing that so for all the everydayers who, the game was late. If you haven't seen everything that Jedd Fisch has had to say, we don't blame you in the slightest bit. One thing that Jedd Fisch said about Javon Parker, who did not play on Saturday, is that they worked him out before the game and they just felt like he needed one more week before he was able to come back. So he was suited. He's on sidelines. It seems like he's pretty close to being able to be ready to play after a minor knee surgery after spring practice, as he told us a couple of weeks ago. And one guy, Lars, that I was so impressed with and have been throughout the fall, really, because he showed this in spurts. He just never got a huge opportunity to prove it, was Bryce Butler. Bryce Butler was really, really good yesterday, where that's a dude on a couple of different occasions where he's just slipping run fits and getting into the backfield, blowing up plays where I know he had one TFL, but there were a couple other ones where it's, this guy looks really, really nice. And having an extra piece like that is really helpful, where you and I have kind of been talking where it's, okay, yeah, there's Valdez, there's Javon Parker when he's around, now that he's, hopefully back to being healthy. Behind that, there's Jacob Bandis, there's Logan Sagapolu, but who else is there? That's been the biggest question. And Alinius Davis looked good. I don't think he really popped per se, in my opinion, but he looked good. He was solid. Bryce Butler popped. Bryce Butler looks like he could be a really nice piece of this defense. And that's without mentioning Sebastian Valdez, who I was extremely impressed with yesterday as well.
Yeah, Seabass checked all the boxes. I don't think that one was It was one of those where like, okay, again, kind of he did what we expected. But again, you have to have that second guy next to him. And I'm glad you mentioned Prysock because he was a guy where, again, signed with Arizona, was one of the initial spring transfers. And I'm talking before spring ball, not in spring ball when they got Logan and the rest of the roster, basically. And so you knew that was a guy, especially coming out of JUCO, where it's, okay, in the spring, he seemed like a depth guy, but it's like, well, what's truly going to look like? And in fall camp, we did see him get a significant amount of run with the 1/2 defense. And it's kind of almost, in a way, what I thought Master Cree would be, where it's just bringing in a JUCO guy with experience to play a role. That's exactly what Bryce Butler did. And again, it's Weber State, so it is what it is. But I mean, again, if you can't, there's no way you're going to dominate Michigan, Indiana, Minnesota, Purdue, whoever, if you can't dominate Weber State. And so for me, it was a good kind of test to see how does the depth look behind Parker? What are the options there? Because again, as we saw over the past couple of seasons, and as we know every season, somebody's going to miss some games. We don't want it, but somebody's going to somehow miss some games. And by the way, even if you don't, you're not talking about a potential 5-man front where you could go Davis, Valdez, Bandis, Parker, whoever you want to put in there. You can get more exotic with the looks if you want, but having that depth up the middle is so crucial because, again, Bandis didn't have his best game, but again, we kind of know like he's better against the run than he is the pass. And so to see Bryce kind of affect the pocket and get in the backfield was also promising to see because it's one thing to be a run stuffer. It's another thing like kind of like J-Bob, like Seabass to get pressure and actually impact the game in more than just one way against the run. Because defending the run is important, obviously. I'm not discrediting that. But ideally in this scheme, you need a little bit more pressure from the interior, not just from the edges. Because we saw too many times last night, I think. You could see the pressure coming outside, and there was not a soul around 10 yards to stop Munoz in terms of after he got out of the pocket and scramble. That's where a little bit of my concern is.
So I agree with you there. It felt like he broke contain one too many times there. There were a couple plays where it still felt like, something that you and I both wanted to watch for that we sent out to our insiders was the cohesion on defense and the communication where there were one or two plays where it looked like a couple of linebackers like ran into each other where they didn't know who was supposed to cover who, and it turned into a big gain on more than one occasion. But one thing that I really want to get to is, shout out to, you talked about the pressure, Lars, with there's pressure all over the place, which is really nice, but it only turned into one sack. And that went to Alphonzo Tuputala and Voitinufu combined for it. But we need to talk about the secondary, man, because the secondary was nails. Like, aside from the numbers, I really don't think the numbers aren't even a good enough indicator of how impressive the secondary was. Where looking throughout the evening at it, Thaddeus Dixon was excellent. Ephesians Prysock was perfect. Like I don't think that was pass interference on the one that he got called for there. And just looking on the secondary, Jordan Shaw was really good. Cameron Broussard, I was really impressed with. Mikel Esteen, Cameron Fabiculanen, Dyson McCutcheon made a couple of really nice plays. It's just a really, really solid group.
I don't know. I think it was Nick Lemcab that I was walking out the tunnel with. And I said, I made this joke a couple of times, and I feel comfortable making it on the show. John Richardson deserves a semifinals nod for the Broyles Award for the simple fact of teaching Thaddeus Dixon how to play within himself, because he has so much potential from a physicality perspective. He's the exact kind of physical.
Can I stop you for 1 second? Never wrong, just early. My agenda. Sorry, please continue.
but again, that's also kind of to put a bow on this segment. It's exactly what I thought from the night, where our call fade. There's trash coaching they got in the secondary last season, and that's not Chuck Morrell. That's not Chuck Morrell's fault. He was a solid defensive play caller, especially towards the end of the season. He made the adjustments in the national championship. John Richardson. That's why I said this is a return to the DB 2013, 14, 15, 16 era under Jimmy Lake. I say that specifically for what Jimmy did early on in his tenure with Marcus Peters, Kevin King, all those experienced guys that were already on the roster that actually finally got coaching. Look what happens. Just look what happens.
That's the thing. That's one of the reasons we've been so high on this defense. Just to continue what you're saying there, because one of the reasons we've been so high on this defense is we knew the secondary could be really good. The question is, what are the run fits going to look like? And I mean, shout out to the somewhat coach speak answer that all the guys gave after the game, which was, this is going to be our worst game of the year, which I love that. I respect that. I love that. But if they can clean up those run fits, Lars, I really think this defense is going to be one of the best in the country. And they showed it. And, like we did on our Friday show, we have gone this entire segment without saying the name Carson Bruener. And Carson Bruener was excellent. So we just have to make sure we say his name because he was excellent. But he wasn't the story of the day, which is a good thing, really, where that's just how solid everything else was around him. And Lars, with that being said, we got to move on here because we still have some concerns that we have to get to before that Jedd Fisch certainly wants to address too before Eastern Michigan. And we'll get there right after message from our friends over at Ultimate Football Head Coach. Hey, Locked On Huskies fans, I want to take a minute to give you a heads up on a brand new mobile game that I think you're going to love just as much as I do, Ultimate College Football HC. In this amazing game and simulation, you get to step into the shoes of a head coach and lead your college football program to glory. Can you imagine actually being the head coach of the Huskies? From recruiting players and hiring coaching staff to overseeing training camps and handling school scholarships, you control every crucial detail of your program. It's all in your hands. Will you be able to handle the pressure? And here's what I really love about the game. You're responsible for calling offensive plays during the season. Your strategy will not only determine the success of your football season, but will shape the future and legacy of your program. Ultimate College Football HC is completely free, has no ads, and is 100% playable offline. You can play on the go as you want and when you want to. And of course, we have a special offer for Locked On Husky fans. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCFB, all caps, inside the game store to receive a free boost to your program. Make sure to take advantage of this perk as it will get your team off to a strong start. To download the game, just visit ultimate-cfb.com or look it up on the app stores. Ultimate College Football HC. Begin your coaching legacy today. So, Lars, we had plenty of minor things that we wanted to note before we get into some of the big concerns. I think Will Rogers was a little bit off in some of his timing, where that like deep out route he threw to Giles, the ball came out a little bit late and looked like, if that ball's out a little bit sooner, maybe he scores, but these are minor things. Like Jeremiah Hunter only getting 2 targets, minor thing. The run fits, somewhat of a minor thing, where it just felt like, they did a good job for the most part, but there were just a couple big plays. I don't know what other ones you might have had in there, but those are things that I saw that need to be noted, but I'm not overly concerned with.
Yeah, I would put. I'm with you on Rogers again. I think Jedd said he would want 1 ball back. I would say 2. The second one over the middle.
2 also.
The one over the middle to Hunter that looked a little bit behind him. I don't specifically remember the Giles one because I know he was 10 for 10, but I think. Well, the 4th down one, I have several questions for us, John. Jedd kind of addressed the post game where he said, yeah, he wants the one to Denzel back because there was some miscommunication. Well, there better have been some miscommunication because that ball was about 7 yards out of bounds. But with that being said, again, it looked like Denzel ran a slightly different route. I do want to see the offense, and again, it takes me back to that first scrimmage when I asked Jimmy Doherty about, hey, 8 o'clock start. You think that's why the offense started slow? And he's like, maybe you got to figure that out because we play at 8 p.m. on the opener. And I think part of that was, you're first of all, they had 5 different offensive line units in the first, 7 drives. Like the first, like it. Well, it was chalk for the first 3. I know that for a fact because it was chalk for the first 3. Then they flipped Drew and Soane on drive 4. Landen came in on drive 4 and 5. And so it was, and then Enokk was at left tackle on drive 6, which just blew my mind.
Enokk played both tackle spots.
But yeah, Enokk played 3 positions. 1 or 2 guys to play 3 positions, which is hilarious. But again, also kind of what we expected in a way. Not necessarily that drastically, but it did answer a question that I came to you in bed with in the press box where without Master Crew, who's your back left tackle? And I think we got an answer. It's 2 guys that are already starting on the line, which is not necessarily great when it comes to depth. But for me, it's okay. How quick is that? Well, when we get there, but my thing is also, can you get rid of the slow starts? Because the defense is going to hang no matter what. But to ask the defense to hang more and more, we've seen Washington teams in the past where, okay, that only works for a couple of weeks, and then teams are going to start to scheme around your defense. And I think Steve Belichick passed the test, but he's still got more tests to prove as he makes adjustments and things like that. But for me, it's just, can the offense start a little quicker? Because, when you get in the Big Ten play, that cannot happen.
So I agree with you there. The first thing I want to say is, because my biggest concern, as is yours, is the offensive line depth, where there were a lot of things that need to be worked on up front, where, technically Soane still has a little bit of a ways to go. And I liked, the fact that it's early on, rotating, trying other guys there, seeing what it looks like, where you and I talked about Drew Azzopardi playing left tackle when they tried him out there in the spring. And we were kind of like, yeah, he should fit on the right side. Still certainly how I feel, but he looked better, I want to say, at that position, and showing Enokk being that he was able to take reps at both tackle spots. I thought that was a positive too, where I don't think he was necessarily perfect at his spot, but it was nice to know that they have that. And then another reason that I say that, Lars, is because that meant Landen Hatchett got to come into the game and play guard, which you love to see. And D'Angelo was good enough at center last night. And just, it's all about finding the best five. That's what Jedd Fisch has said. That's what Brendan Carroll has said. That's what it is. That's what building an offensive line is. But Landen, in terms of talent, certainly is one of the best five. But obviously there are other circumstances, like rehabbing from an injury, that make that a little bit more difficult. And just the fact that right now it seems like they're way deeper on the interior than they are at tackle, which, that's its own thing. But when you look at it, because especially, Elijah Jaquette didn't play last night, Maximus McCree didn't play last night, and we'll just kind of have to monitor their status going forward. But when I look at just what the line is going to look like, I'm way more concerned about the pass blocking than I am about the run blocking, where Jonah looked really good. Adam looked really good. Cam Davis looked really good. But when we really kind of got into the thick of things with some of those different pass sets and just the pressure that Will Rogers took, some of the hits that he took, I really want to see more there.
So not only are you not wrong in that, I just want you to take a guess. Played more than 10 snaps, so there's a key right there. Who had the highest pass blocking grade by PFF in the Weber State game? What would be your guess?
I want to say Landen. I want to say Landen.
So Landen was 11.
Okay.
Kaylee Tafai graded that as the highest pass blocking with a 79.6. D'Angelo Titi, to your point, 79.3. And then you get into some, Zach Henning, Enokk, and then Landen. That's your top five in terms of offensive linemen. And for me, the reason why I bring all that is to say, again, I think D'Angelo improved. He's your center. But that's also why Landen got guard experience. I remember last fall camp where he was looked at as a guard. Now, again, between him and Garrett, his older brother, he was a pure center. But again, as we've said, get your best five. If your best five means playing him at right guard, just like Parker Burlesford was going to do last season before the Mateo Mele injury, do it. That doesn't mean you're not going to be a good center in 2 years or a year from now. But if your best offensive line ends up being Enokk at left tackle and Landen at right guard and everything else is the same, I'm good with that, honestly. And by the way, Jonah Coleman got on the first touchdown. To me, and I think honestly for Drew's progression, you want to keep him at right tackle. And Enokk, actually, I believe, came out of Hawaii as an offensive tackle. And someone correct me if I'm wrong on that one, but I remember him coming out as an offensive tackle, played more guard than anything else. But as an experienced guy, it's like, well, yeah, if we need you to play anywhere on this line, you've been in college for 4 or 5 years, we expect you to kind of figure that one out. And he did, to his credit.
Absolutely. And that's just one of the things where, you question the depth, but that's a positive in terms of what it's going to look like. I want to move on real quickly before we get out of here, because I want to spend just a couple seconds just on Jeremiah Hunter, where I don't think there's anything to worry about personally. And just the more that I look into, I need to go back and rewatch the game again, but the more I look into it, the more I just say, okay, it just didn't feel like it was there. Where Weber State tried their best to key in on Denzel at times. And it felt like whenever they weren't doing that, they were trying to key in on Jeremiah, because Jeremiah was the guy with all the production. So I think that that's something that might change moving forward, where I don't necessarily think they did a great job of, covering him. Like Will looked solid. Will distributed the ball really, really well throughout the night. But I just think that in terms of the way the game flow was, it wasn't his night for one reason or another. And moving forward, that's not something that's going to happen. Where now that we've seen, Denzel have more catches and yards than he's had in his entire career last night, that it's something that, okay, this is going to look a little bit different. And for anybody out there who might be concerned about, Jeremiah not getting a whole ton of targets or getting a catch, I truly wouldn't be.
I would also say Giles Jackson says thank you. I think that's also the other side of the coin, where it would be an actual concern if Giles had 4 or 5 catches, Denzel had what he had, and Jeremiah had what he had, because that means, okay, you're missing probably 3 drives worth of production right there. So yeah, sure. if somebody wants to double Jeremiah or take Jeremiah out and force you to play with Denzel and Giles, I think they proved last night. Yeah, we can do that. It's not great, but we can make it work. And that's also, again, to tie the whole show together, why Jonah Coleman in the run game is so effective and so important, because yeah, you can have a great quarterback, but you need to have a balanced offense. Otherwise, you're basically iterating with Mike Leach, which has a ceiling of 7-8 wins.
Right. Lars, with that being said, as always, thank you so much for being here. Thank you all everydayers for tuning in. We really do appreciate your support, and thank you for making Locked On Huskies your first listen of the day. Now go check out the Locked On College Football podcast, from NIL deals, never-ending conference realignment rumors. Our guy, Spencer McLaughlin, gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron. You can find the link to Locked On College Football in the description, so you don't need to search. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And also go make sure that you check out the Locked On Huskies Insider Program, which is down in the description below. You get a free 2-week trial. After that, it's $4.99 a month. You get so many great features, the ability to chat with us one-on-one, access to exclusive Q&As, interviews that we're going to be posting over there, like post games, things like that. Stuff that, might not necessarily always be out there for the general public. You get the opportunity to ask us whatever questions you might want. We're dropping rumors over there. We're dropping the injury reports as soon as we get them ASAP. We're dropping stuff that you might not be hearing anywhere else. So you want to make sure you go check that out. Again, it's a free 2-week trial. After that, it's $4.99 a month. And we're working our very, very hardest to make sure it is very, very well worth that. And with that being said, now that the season is officially back, Washington has played a game. Please make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcast, whether that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We're there. We're everywhere. We're updating this channel with new content every single day. So please make sure you click that like button, click that little bell so you never miss when we post a new video. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, drop them right down below in the comment section. And if you're audio only, please leave us a 5-star review. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we're going to talk to you next time on Tuesday.